My name is Michael, and I'm excited to present our work titled The Reward for Luck, Understanding the Effect of Random Reward Mechanisms in Video Games on Player Experience. People play video games for a variety of different reasons, but one common factor is that players expect games to provide them with rewards when they do well. Players feel good when games do this. These rewards can manifest through a variety of different ways, among others, a high score, a special achievement, or a valuable in-game item. What if though sometimes the reward that the game provides is simply not that good? What if a player invests a lot of time and effort only to receive an item that's objectively poor? And what if the opposite occurs? In certain reward systems, the reward received by the player falls onto a probabilistic spectrum. To illustrate some examples in practice, we consider three separate game scenarios. The commonality across these scenarios is the player receives a reward that is quote-unquote random. More specifically, these scenarios involve a trigger condition, for example, killing a mob, that leads to a probabilistic procedure that generates the reward received by the player. We call such systems random reward mechanisms, or RRMs for short. RRMs can manifest in many ways, however, different RRMs are perceived in drastically different manners. For example, paid RRM systems such as loot boxes have garnered controversy for their similarities to gambling. Yet not all RRMs are perceived negatively. So what prompts these differences in perception? Much of the past research in RRMs has focused on the negative social aspect of certain RRMs. Other studies have developed classification systems to better understand the differences among paid RRMs. And a classification for generalized random rewards has been proposed in the past as well, focusing on the utility of the received reward. However, in this study, we look at more of the player experience side, considering how people interact and engage with all types of RRM systems before, during, and after receiving their reward. What separates RRMs from other reward systems is their unpredictability. Unpredictability is fundamental to games, and many past theoretical studies have viewed it positively. However, how is unpredictability in rewards, a part of gameplay that's typically supposed to make people feel really good, affect player emotions, engagement, and experience? We investigate three main research questions in the study. What are the different types of RRMs that currently exist? How do people perceive and engage with different RRMs? And how can we design better, more user-friendly, more emotionally significant RRM systems? These questions tie into the three main contributions of our study: developing a classification system, generating empirical findings on player experience, and suggesting methodological considerations. Our methods first involved a video analysis study. We chose a diverse mix of 35 RRMs from 28 games, extracting videos for each. Qualitative notes on the objective observable factors were combined with added information from various sources to generate a textual representation for each RRM. We then performed deductive thematic analysis. The final categories from our analysis helped us build out a 9-dimensional RRM representation displayed here, forming our classification system drawn from observable and implicit details. Another round of analysis grouped these rewards into the broader categories of context of the overall game, integration within the game, and reward presentation, which would help motivate subsequent findings. With a base classification system, we then conducted semi-structured interviews with video game players. Participants discussed RRMs they were personally familiar with, but to unify the experience and to introduce diversity, we also selected a representative subset of RRM videos to show the participants. We asked about what they liked about each implementation, what they disliked, what factors impacted their experience the most and why, etc. The collected data was analyzed through thematic analysis, and extracted themes motivate our findings. Our first finding is related to unpredictability as a whole. The uniqueness in gameplay arising from the randomness of RRMs was generally well received. Participants mentioned that this provides a sense of individualism for each playthrough, which makes the game more fun, echoing past research into this area. Due to the uncertainty in the reward received, participants noted that the role of luck was more prominent. Regarding competitive games against other players, participants implied that an increase in reliance on luck results in a decrease in reliance on skill, or the competency in pure gameplay. This may help serve as a system of balance, allowing less skilled players to better match up against more skilled ones, if they get lucky with better rewards. Although this was seen to make the game less frustrating for the less skilled majority, several players did note that this can be a deterrent to perceived fairness. We also note that even though RRMs may attenuate pure gameplay skill, it also introduces adaptability as a new skill, the ability to adjust playthroughs or playstyles to the received reward. However, sometimes players feel that they must get a certain reward from my RRM system. If the reward is achieved through spending time and effort, players will grind for the reward, which may quickly bore them if they are solely performing an action towards an end. Possibly worse, though, is if the reward is achieved through financial resources. This can lead to reckless spending. Certain psychological tricks may be employed to induce further spending. In either case, players essentially simulate getting a deterministic reward through constantly triggering the RRM, and as such, the prior discussed unique experiential effects of RRMs become nullified. Our next major findings section involves the presentation of rewards, which is best illustrated through a video. On the screen, you can see the loot box opening sequence from the game Apex Legends. So in this video, factors of juiciness, which is a term referring to the audio and visual embellishments, play a major factor in player enjoyment and engagement. In this specific presentation, factors of juiciness arise from the spinning animations and the colors and the various sound effects that occur. The level of visually and audially stimulating reward presentations was ideal when it was commensurate to the resource expenditure to receive the reward. Aspects of juiciness and other design decisions, such as having it on an external menu, can delay the pace or the flow of the game, but can also emphasize the importance of specific reward mechanisms and add anticipation. However, even with high resource expenditure, the unpredictability of RRMs mean that players may get rewards that are relatively worse. The term rarity is used to denote the value of the rewards. Players tend to place all of their hopes and values into getting high rarity, more scarce rewards, often with more juicy animations, and lower rarity rewards are often treated with apathy and indifference. However, the system of frequent misses and infrequent hits was still preferred by most participants. Finally, when the user puts in a lot of effort into receiving the reward and they get lucky, a well-crafted, juicy animation can feel like an additional reward on top of the already received reward, an audio-visual experience that recognizes the player's efforts. Overall, our findings motivate points of consideration for game designers, which we discuss with a few practical examples in the paper. For instance, what are the trade-offs between having a random reward mechanisms versus a deterministic reward? In particular, a question to consider is what are the affordances of each random reward, and if a player gets a reward that is worse, what sort of actions will they take? If you choose to use a random reward, how will players perceive the trade-off between luck and skill? Although random rewards can serve as a system of balance, how will players perceive fairness? This is especially important for games that are designed to be competitive, for example, many esports-related games. And finally, how will players create significance from the rewards that they receive? And tied to that, how does that affect the way in which the reward should be presented to them? What kind of feelings will the factors of juiciness evoke, and are those suitable to the player experience? Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please reach out to the authors.